Okay. What's this? The 20th of May. Month is about over. I hope you've had a enjoyable week. Uh, and we'll go ahead and get started with our session. Uh, the first thing I want to do this morning uh, before I ask to see if there are any questions, uh, I want to apologize to Kathy because I completely forgot about something. Kathy asked a question Monday night, and I meant to research it this week, and I've looked at everything but that. I forgot about it. Uh, and what we'll do, Kathy, if you don't mind. Kathy, are you on tonight? This morning, excuse me.
It
Okay.
it wasn't the one that I read. I can't remember where I read it. I've looked, but I still can't find it. So yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, what we'll do, maybe even after we get off the phone, we'll find your question and look at it, and so we can talk about it first thing tomorrow. But I not only apologize to you, I apologize to everybody because we usually feed off questions, and that's what keeps us going. And this one, just lost it in my head, I guess. No excuses, but we will get to your question.
Okay. All right.
Yes, ma'am. Uh, so with that said, we'll see if we have any other questions before we get into something uh, that we started on Monday night. But I want to see first if we have any other questions on the table. Questions or comments or anything that you guys may have experienced this week. Okay. On Monday evening, I saw something in Jeremiah 17, something I had looked at a couple weeks ago, and I was looking at the words curse and blessing, and found the rest of it pretty interesting. And we got into it some on Monday evening. But however, during the discussion, uh, it was became apparent to me that Sheldon saw this a lot clearer than I did, and his explanation. So, well, I spoke with him and asked him if he would to go back over what he talked about, and of course I looked at 1 through 8, or just wherever he wants to start and go back over this because I thought it was very interesting. So, Sheldon, if you're on and if you're ready, it's all yours.
I will. Let me ask you right quick, Ron, right before I start. What is
Yes,
the scripture for Kathy, if you remember,
that's I'm
or
flipping
Kathy
through my
then?
notes. Yeah, trying to remember. I wrote it down, but it's bad when you have pieces of paper everywhere and you can't remember where you write stuff. And that's what I
No,
did.
that's,
And
that's bad.
yeah, so again, I apologize, y'all.
Oh no! I was just wondering, while we were on. And Kathy, do you have it right now? If not, we can definitely come back to it. I was just wondering ahead of time.
One that Ron put up was in Acts somewhere. I can't remember exactly which one he said,
Was
but
was it Acts 2 something?
thought I would put my spirit. I would pour my spirit. I think Ron said he saw one in Acts and somewhere else. I can't remember the other
Well,
one.
It
the
was the
one,
other
the
part
one,
was in. The other part was in. He said Joel.
yeah,
Right.
I
Joel.
got it.
That's
It's Acts 2:17, and I'm not sure what the corresponding scripture is for Joel. And I'm only bringing this up right now, just in case there's others, teachers or whatever who are looking at it before I get started on Jeremiah. But it was Acts
yeah,
2:17.
and Joel. I don't remember in Joel, but uh, that's the one in Acts was referencing Joel, and the
Correct.
reason why I
Yes.
thought Joel was and that's Joel, not Job, Job. It's Joel, Joel. So, yeah. I tell you what, give me 1 second then before you get started, and I'll tell you where that is. Because it was a good question. We just
While you looking at it, Kathy, you want to ask your question right quick, and we can come back to whether it's tomorrow or later today.
The one that I was reading, it was saying, "Put my spirit in Him," and I think I was looking up some information about the woman at the well, but what I pulled up, it was saying I will put my spirit in Him instead of saying her, and then it said at the end of the scripture it said Him again, and I was wondering why would it say Him and not well, in my study Bible it say all kind of people. Why would it just say Him instead of her or all people?
Okay.
Okay, I'm just writing that down. Okay, it is Joel. I'm sorry, Joel chapter 2 starts in verse 28 through 32. Joel, verse 28 through 32. For anybody who wants to read it.
Okay.
So what? Run.
Joel, chapter 2, starting at verse 28, and it's verses 28 through verse 32, the explanation.
All right. Thank you,
And
both of you. Go ahead, Ron.
Verse 16 said, was spoken through the prophet Joel, and then it talks about it. So, yeah, that's where it was originally written.
I believe it was just the interpretation of that author, because all of the cross references relate to pouring out my spirit on all flesh. Then it goes on to say your sons and daughters do certain things. So it's like we say, to man, but we mean all of mankind, all of humankind. It's the same kind of concept. The intent is that it goes to all those that are living.
Okay, thank you, Miss B. That does make sense.
It's also cross-referenced in Acts 2:17 that talks about pouring out my spirit on all people, and then it talks about sons and daughters, and it does it also in Luke. And Luke quotes Acts 2:17. So again, it's about all mankind, all humanity.
Okay.
So would that be the same as when He breathed breath of life when we were created, when man were created, or that means something else?
This talks about, I believe, something in addition to that, because it came during a time when the people were backsliding and things like that, and He was saying, "Okay, this is what I'm going to do for you. When you come back to me, this is what I'm going to do for you." It's like it's renewing the purpose, renewing the will of the people to want to follow the Creator, and it even adds something different, that not only will you follow me, but your sons and daughters will do different things, prophesy, blah blah blah.
maybe maybe that this is a sign to us that we'll look at that one day and entirely and kind of break it down a little bit. We'll make a point to make a study of it.
Sounds good. So going back to as Ron mentioned, Jeremiah 17 and 1. I guess just as a quick recap, and then any questions or comments that may follow. It talks about Judah, and it talks about. It seems like the Lord is in a sense punishing them, but there's a lot more that is actually going on here. Starting off in the first verse, it starts to talk about what is written on the Judah people's hearts. And what it means by what is written on their hearts, it means what they truly believe in, what is very, very important to them. And it's chiseled on their hearts, just like something engraved on a tablet, chiseled on a tablet, because they believe so strongly in this. As it talks about the horns of their altars, it talks about, again, what is very important to them and what they actually hold up as being important and having value. It starts talking about their children, and it starts, which is something that actually came from them in a sense, what they actually created here in the earth. And it talks about their Asherim, which is akin to the Tower of Babel, which that too is talking about more so stored up inheritance. But again, that has been something that is already here in a sense, and you're leaning on. As we move down into the third verse, and it starts to talk about the mountain of mine in the countryside. And as Audrey mentioned on Monday, that being the consciousness. And this is where things start to seem like they're actually turning, or the sense of punishment, which we will go into a little bit further in a moment. All the wealth and all the treasures will be plundered. And with the plundering of these particular things, going back to the first verse we started off, I forgot to mention the sin of Judah. And it's important to actually talk about what sin is, what we've mentioned in the past. Sin is just simply an entanglement in terms of, sin isn't an action that takes place. Sin happens before that. Sin is eternal, and sin is a disconnect or some type of, if you want to think about it as a knot or a blockage where things are not clear. That's where sin is, in a sense. Any action that comes that we traditionally consider as a sin is typically, not typically, is a result of that disconnect. And going back to their heart and what they believed in their heart, that was a disconnect because it was a disconnect from who they actually were and what they started to believe they were. Up until this point, all of these things that they had gotten, this wealth and the treasure, the children and things like that, came about because they were walking more so in who they were, were not being blocked in a sense, just being who they are, who they're supposed to be. And we're going to I'm going to, well, not me, but here we're going to see that in a different form in a bit when it comes to trees as an analogy. So going back to verse 3 and then 4, in terms of their inheritance and what they were actually supposed to get and how they're supposed to lead. Yes, sir.
I wanted to speak to sin before you leave it, unless you're coming back to it.
Speak to what now?
Sin. When you're talking about sin.
Oh, no. Definitely, because that will help unpack. It's like that. That was very important to actually understand what's going on. That's like one of the basic principles. So definitely go ahead.
Sin. You're talking about sin as internal, and it is. And the action is a manifestation of the internal sin, the entanglement. So how is it that we get entangled? How is it that this sin comes about? The major reason that we get caught up in entanglement is because we don't live in the present. We make attempts to live in the past or in the future. The majority, if not all, well, pretty much all of our thoughts connects us to the past or to the future. And as a result, being connected to the past, it ends in depression or low self-esteem by you talking to yourself about what happened. The future leads us to anxiety because we are uneasy about something that has not happened yet. And living in the now helps us to avoid being entangled in anything. That if it happened yesterday and I dwell on it, now I am entangled in yesterday's thoughts, as opposed to knowing that that's simply a memory and there's nothing I can do about that. And in the same vein, the future is nothing I can do about that. It's simply speculation as to what may or may not happen. However, if I live in this moment and I'm listening to what's happening in this moment, I'm interacting with what happens in this moment without dwelling on the future or the past, then I am less likely to get entangled in anything because of my thought process my thought process is understanding the dangers of the past, of dwelling on the past, and the dangers of dwelling on what the future may bring. We are, and the reason that is so is because we are the thought. And when we see something or engage in something, that is also a thought, and those are the things that gets us entangled, usually past or future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. Does it make sense to others?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Mm-hmm.
And more than makes sense to me, it kind of resonates. It resonates to the point where thinking about something that should have happened before or could happen tomorrow takes your focus off of what's going on right now. And so that resonates very strongly with me. Thoughts of the past or thoughts of the future kind of prevent you from dwelling in the the now of where you are.
Yeah, it really speaks to the fact that, yeah, an entanglement is right, because we get so twisted and turned up in those thoughts that's what imprisons us, really. So yeah, what you said really resonates.
Those, if you look at the cross, if we are thought and we try and our thoughts travel a linear pathway, then that's when we really get caught up. But if we look at the cross and see the vertical bar of the cross, the vertical part of the cross, we see height and depth. So we stay right there in the center where it crosses and don't move to past or present, deal with the future. That's what carries us into rhythm with the universe, puts us in rhythm with the universe, and grants us enlightenment beyond our expectations. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Good morning, everyone. I agree with some things that have been stated about thought. However, to me, there's really nothing wrong with a thought if you're trying to catapult yourself somewhere in the future. And from my past, I need to learn from my mistakes. And you can't dwell on them. I agree with that. Yet you do need to. I would put that as a footnote. Hey, I walked down this path, and this is what I experienced. If I walk down this path again, these are the things I'm gonna do. These are the things I'm not gonna do. So relying on your past is a footnote. If the past was not so good, I'm going to rely on that footnote. If the past brought me pleasure or it advanced me or it did good for me, I'm going to rely of the past to predict the future or where I would like to be in the future. So I agree with what you all have stated about past and future and living in the present. However, our past is a footnote to determine how we gonna be or how we should maneuver. Thank you.
It's funny because the scripture, I guess in a sense, is timeless. These scriptures is helping to explain that more what you're saying. So when we talk about the past, think of it more of akin as holding on tightly to the past to the point where you're not recognizing the future, not the future, the present, and it's keeping you out of the present, so to speak, because you've gotten blind and you're stuck in the past. So in Jeremiah 2, when it talks about the children and talks about the altars and the towers of the inheritance, and then it mentions in the latter part of that verse, by green trees on high hills. That is talking about at a particular time, in a sense, when things were good and that inheritance that they have, that tower was built. And so in this particular situation, it is saying that they were so stuck in that particular time when things were good and they were doing great. Things were nice and lovely, so to speak. That, hopefully more of that will come, I guess, clear. But does that one little part make sense?
Well, before you move on, Sheldon, I just want to add to that because that tower, that Phoenician god, that Canaanite god was the goddess of pleasure, the goddess of love, the goddess of increase. So that exactly, and as George explained it, that's where we get trapped. Whatever has brought us that pleasure in the past, we try to recapture it when we find ourselves in a separated space from where we should be, and if not seeking pleasure, it is at least a place that we find our comfort. This is where I was comfortable. If I'm in a tight bind, at least let me go back to that place that I've experienced, and I know what the expectations are. So yeah,
I'm sorry,
I
Ron.
no, I just want to agree with it, and it does tie into what George was saying.
That's what I want to speak to, because it's that footnote that keeps you tied to the past. It's that footnote that creates disharmony, subconscious disharmony. It's that footnote that also promotes distrust. And that footnote is what ties you to that past, and you are subconsciously out of rhythm with the universe because you are expecting something to happen as it did before. And you don't have any expectations that the universe is going to move on your behalf. Regardless of how we think about the past and what we learn from the past, it is not going to overrule the universe determining our future. The universe is going to do what the universe is going to do. We are our worst enemy when it comes to being in rhythm with the universe. And the reason I say we are our worst enemy is because we speak about the power of God, the power of the Creator, the power of the universe, however we term it. We talk about that power, and then we turn right around and use our minds to address things that happened in the past in order to prevent them from happening in the future. However, if we be still and know that I am Allah, I am God, if we be still and know that, being still does not mean that you are not moving. Being still means that you are silencing your past and your future thoughts so that you can remain in the moment. And remaining in the moment is the thing that moves you to a vertical place, the depth of enlightenment that you receive, and the height of the enlightenment that carries you to a different understanding or a greater place of being. So I'm not saying you don't think about it, but I am saying to determine what you're going to do about the future based on the past is really an exercise in futility, because you can make all the determinations you want to make, and the universe has the last word. So the question is this: why does the universe have the last word? Because it's going to do what's beneficial to humanity. And if you force the idea of I'm going to respond this way in the future, and that something happens, and that's how you respond, you usually find out that you are in worse shape than you were from the previous event. However, if you're going into a meeting, for example, And what did we talk about? Do not predetermine what you're going to say. The Spirit will speak for you. Do not predetermine what you're going to say. The universe will speak for you, because you have to avoid creating scenarios that you cannot control. You can create a scenario as to what you're going to say, but you cannot control what the other person is going to say or the energy that the other person is going to bring to the table. So rather than create the scenarios, it is better to be still and elevate to the depth of enlightenment, so that we can be in unison with the universe. And when that mouth opens, it spews out the wisdom of the universe, the wisdom of God to create it again, however you want to term it. That's what comes out of your mouth. So predetermination about what you're going to do is a projection into the future that you have no control over. Thank you.
Question. Doesn't that predetermination of what you're going to do or say or be or however, doesn't it, that in itself can create entanglements, right? Because of whatever those 7 deadly sins are: pride and lust of the eyes and lust of the flesh or whatever. Anyway, but yes, we can, our past can, to a certain degree, push us in a direction, but we shouldn't latch on to it, as Sheldon was saying, in such a way that that we are trying to force our future. Because that can lead to greater entanglements.
Yeah, what happens is, and what's going on here with the people with Judah, in terms, they themselves created this great past for themselves, this past experience. And it was the thought when they got stuck in the past that they had to control things and try to create the present or the future as it was the past. But what was going on, the underlying belief, what was chiseled in their heart, was that they didn't believe in themselves anymore. And this was something that they had to take control over, because they no longer had faith in themselves and their abilities. This entire few verses, everything is mentioned, everything is being done, is all internal, even the Lord. As it goes on to verse 3, and it says, I will turn over your wealth and your treasures as plunder. That person is doing that because they are not functioning in the same way that, in a sense, got them there. And so, again, they believe that they have to take matters in their own hand to try to hold on to that, in a sense. And that in itself is the entanglement. That in itself is the sin. That actually even thinking that they have to do that, not knowing that naturally the universe is going to just provide that anyway. It's like you have to keep moving, in a sense, in the present, not looking and hanging on to the back. And then I was just thinking about it as Pastor Richard was talking about it anyway. No thing that we have created can we create again anyway, and it have the same effect in a sense. No moment can anybody create again. Every moment is automatically going to be new and special in its own way, one of a kind. No one has successfully created the same thing twice.
thought,
Go ahead, Reverend.
our thoughts, when we hold on to the past or the future in our thoughts, what we are being guided by is our mind and not the Ruach, not our soul or our spirit. We're being guided by our mind, and our mind is the seat of ego. And ego can lead you to a place of selfishness and arrogance. Ego, the mind convinces you that that's who you are, when exactly your mind or your ego, your spirit, your soul, shows you who you really are. And who you really are is the one who is being still. If you follow an ego, ego tells you anything that makes you feel good and you think that's you. Those voices in your head that's telling you, chalk this up, don't ever forget it, because it's coming back to you. And now, what you have done, put on the calendar of your mind an event that you cannot control nor orchestrate, again, as Sheldon was saying. And what you've also done is crowded the future from your past, and you are inviting antagonism, not necessarily from the same source and not necessarily in the same way, but you're inviting antagonism. You're inviting pain. You're inviting confusion, and it doesn't necessarily come in the same way, but it's the same energy. However, when you be still and you don't judge your future by your past, you simply recognize what that past is and don't dwell on it, and you give up the free will, which means simply that you allow the rhythm of the universe to move you forward, and that is listening to your soul. If you listen to your mind, you got all of these scenarios that you create for your future, and none of them takes place. Or when they do take place, they are very painful, as opposed to allowing the flow of the universe to move you forward. When we make plans to respond to things in our past, because most of them that we want to respond. Phone, please. Would you mute your phone, please? Thank you. Most of the things we hold on to in the past are things that are not good for us anyway, or things that happen in a bad way to us. And we carry that into the future by latching on to the past. However, if you just be still and think about the way the river flows. When the river flows, if that's a huge rock in the way, it will find the path of least resistance. And that's how we flow with the universe, finding the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is to be in rhythm with the universe, so you can actually avoid all of those circumstances that have taken place in your past life, and you don't have to subconsciously invite that energy to you again. The universe simply shows you how to avoid those circumstances. Thank you.
And
Good
adding
morning.
on
You go
Go
ahead,
ahead, Joe. But I was,
Sheldon, I kind of disagree with what you stated about creating the same situation twice. I do feel if I reinvent myself, I can create the same situation 2 times, 4 times, then a couple of more times. And I think the line that separates us is you all are talking more from a spiritual aspect, and I'm talking about more so of a physical aspect. I do, like I say, when you reinvent yourself, you can create the same situation or the feeling of that situation in abundance of time.
George, what is the reinvention though? I don't get that part.
Even before you get to the reinvention, even before you get there, there is no such thing as doing it in a physical sense. The physical is simply a manifestation of what's in your mind or your soul. So either you're going to adhere to the mindset, your mind, or you're going to adhere to spirituality. If you adhere to your mind, you will never be in a rhythm with the universe if you simply follow your mind. A gut feeling is a spiritual truth. To mentally process is to try to contain or to try to control everything. There are many things. Like Barbara said earlier, it resonates. That's not a process in your mind. That is an experience in your soul. That is the difference between living through your mind and living through your soul. And you're right, George. With your mind, you can create those circumstances over and over again. But the question is this: do you get the same results? No, you won't, because the same people who are involved may not be involved the next time. However, I would like someone to ask to understand what the reinvention is and what it looks like.
So you want me to answer that, or Ron, is that the question that you were asking, Ron?
Well, you may have a different answer. I agree with what Pastor said. The path that you take, that you were trying to describe, is either through your mind or your spirit. That you say reinvent yourself. What other way can you do it? You see what I mean? So you and not agreeing, it's you just kind of further opened it up to explain what was being said. Those are the only 2 paths that you can take. When you look at yourself again, and you what would be the purpose of reinventing yourself? You see?
Well, with me, some people will say, "Hey, I got to start all over in life." Some people will say, "Hey, I got to reinvent myself again." And in some cases, when I've said, "Man, God dog, I got to start all over again," I'm saying it from a negative aspect or not so good aspect. Yet when I say I got to start all over again, it's just a different kind of energy when you reinvent yourself. You look at the situation, you address the situation, you see the pros and cons, you try to predict where your valley's going to be, where your peak's going to be, and you just make that adjustment. Or I just make that adjustment. I just stand firmly that I can create a situation abundantly. I can create that situation with the same people because they may not be present, yet the feeling that it gave me in accomplishing whatever I wanted to do, I can experience that again, the experience of it. So like I say, I think you can create situations where the experience or the feeling will be the same, yet the participants of it may be different. So I just choose to say reinvent myself instead of starting over. I hope that answered your question, Ron. Thank you, Sheldon and Ron and Rev.
Okay. What I was talking about when I said everything is new when you're creating something different is more so the way that you interact with it. So, for example, you can listen to your favorite song over and over and over again, but depending on your mood, who's around, etc., it may be slight differences in what you actually get from that particular song, what it brings out in you. There can be similar things, of course, but you listening to that song over again, like I said, there are going to be slight differences. Everything that we're talking about here, though, is talking about when you said spiritual and physical, that's what we're actually talking about is spiritual. We're talking about internal. Even though this is like an allegory, and all of the things that are being said here are using physical things as analogies, everything in here is talking about internal. Going back to verse 3, when it talks about the mountain of mine in the countryside, talking about the consciousness. Going in the latter part, say your high places for sin throughout your borders, is talking about the idea of, okay, with what Pastor was just saying, what do I have to do to create this path? Automatically, what is not said when you're thinking about what do I have to do to create the path, you are automatically also thinking about all the ways that in the future, my present is not like the past, and therefore I'm thinking about all of the things that concentrating on things that I don't want, in a sense. So what do I have to do to maneuver myself to get this ideal goal that was in the past? Again, this is talking to all of this is internal. And so what's happening when all of a sudden you go down to the fourth verse, because I was only focused on my inheritance, that part being in the future, but it's because of the something to deal with the past and the enemies coming. This is not coming from without. The enemies are those thoughts that, hey, I don't have it. Hey, I have to do something drastically different. Hey, I don't trust in myself to be able to do this on my own. I must intervene. Why must I intervene? Because I'm going to have this negative or bad future if I don't. That is the part where we're talking about trying to control the present or the future, but steady looking at the past. That is just. Go ahead.
That's the problem with religion. It is latched onto the past, and it has no sense of self in terms of what's happening presently. An example of that would be, why is it that there are fewer people in the pews now? What is present that causes that to happen? The present thing that causes that to happen was influenced by the past, a past that we did not create, a past that was brought into existence by the one who has brought everything into existence. It was not brought into existence by us. It was brought into existence by the Creator. And that's COVID. And that's a now situation. People have opportunity to pause. That little mark between your birth and your death, that's the pause. They have opportunity to pause and reevaluate the benefits of the fuse. And the reevaluation was not necessarily a conscious evaluation. It was a spiritual evaluation. And the realization came that though the fellowship is missing, there are greater things in fellowship, and that is spiritual awareness. And that spiritual awareness was rejected by the shakers and movers in religion. But to the younger minds that were searching for something and realizing there's something greater than my mind, something greater than me, that space was filled with loving kindness. Or that space was crowded, so crowded with hatred until it was filled in by hatred. But that younger mind searching, that younger mind was searching, but the soul spoke to the mind. And here we are in a present day where religion has lost its grip from the past and is afraid of the future because it does not realize that the future is an illusion. It is an illusion that is not going to happen the way you think it is, because the man in the gap realizes that we can plan all we want to plan, but it is the Creator of everything that is who has the last word. And the moment that we are be still and know that I am God, you flow with the Spirit. You flow with the essence of the energy that sustains the universe and everything within it. You realize that your body is an illusion. It exists because of thought. You think it does. You think your body is you. When you are thought, you are the thought, not a thought, the thought from which all others emanate. And the direction of your thought determines whether you're going to be inextricably tied to a material world that is also an illusion, or are you going to be the essence, to being the one with everything that is? Recognizing that the objective is to bring duality to an end and become one. When the two becomes one, that's when the true essence of awareness, spiritual awareness, is realized. And the two becoming one mean that the standing at that point and not latching onto the future or the past, not latching onto the past rather, and creating this illusion of the future, just being still is what brings us from a place of duality with a God that exists outside of us, with the universe that exists outside of us. It brings us to a place of unicity where everything is in the same place. Everything is one. because everything is energy / spiritual. Everything. And we can operate in this material, this illusionary material world as though nothing else exists or as though we have control over everything. And actually lose the greater thing. And the greater thing to lose is an awareness of you. And the easiest way to think you know yourself, to think that you're holding on to you, is to convince yourself that you're able to change the past by virtue of facing the future and dealing with the same things. When in essence, you are simply following an ego that has no clue as to who the Creator is, but being still, regardless of what happened in the past and regardless of what the future brings, it doesn't matter because I know who I am, but more importantly, I know whose I am, and the whose that I know I am is me, because I am it and it is me. So it is not my body. It is the unicity of my essence. That is the unicity of my Creator, of our Creator. To make every effort to create things the way you want them to be is the epitome of selfishness. To create things or to create circumstances to get the results you want is the most dangerous thing you can do to yourself, because the day comes when what you thought you want leads to your destruction. And the greater destruction is not you being obliterated. It is you losing sight of everything that you could be and trying to hold on to the water of the material world, and it's slipping through your fingers constantly. And I know you can say that there are people who set their sights on being billionaires and whatever, and they did it because they planned for the future. But then that future does not include, or that life rather does not include an understanding of who you are in regards to our Creator. It's simply following another God that is created in this realm, and that God creates misery. That God brings about adversity between mankind. That God creates all kinds of scenarios because it is the thing that's controlling you, so that no one can take what you have, and others, no one can surpass you. But this thing about being in this spot of unicity with the essence of everything that is the main thing that gives us a sense of oneness with humanity, loving kindness. If we stay in that spot, focus on that, train ourselves to stay there, then we will bring into existence a world of balance. But you can't do that unless you bring it into your world, your existence. Stay there. Yes, your mind may float back to the past, but you reject that. You pull it back to the now. It may create scenarios in the future. Pull it back to the now. Why? Because whatever happens, it will be manifested spiritually from the spiritual source that has my well-being at heart. And that first source of well-being has to be you, seeking to be more aware of who you are spiritually, without regard to the manifestations in the physical realm of those things that you think are beneficial to you, whether it be money, knowledge, it doesn't matter. That's beneficial to you as opposed to being beneficial to humanity. And when we create scenarios to bring those kinds of scenes back into existence, then what we are doing is actually self and not for humanity. Thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions, or comments?
I guess one of the things I was thinking about when you were speaking earlier was looking at the Hebrews coming out of Egypt and being in the wilderness and being uncomfortable in a place and saying, why did you leave us in Egypt? Where because that's something they were familiar with. Although they cried to get out, they thought about their past because it was something that at the time they felt comfort. And I just listening to Pastor's explanation of the pause between life and death. I suppose that would be our wilderness experience, whether or not we live or die, whether or not we come through that by letting go of the past and seeing who we truly are. And it kind of explains, I hope anyway, kind of ties into what you were saying, Sheldon. But yeah, that's just the Egyptian experience kind of came to me when you guys were talking.
Yeah, I guess to connect that to what the two what you were saying and try to make it clear. I guess in verse 4, when it says, in terms of you will let go of your inheritance and you will serve your enemies. The enemies that is being referred to here is the idea of or thought that an adversary to one prospering and flourishing that is actually trying to be avoided. And as they concentrate on these terrible things or trying to hold on because I don't want to lose this particular thing, they actually create the conditions because the entire time, even what that inheritance that they had, they created, they are now creating the conditions for those enemies or for that thing that they're concentrating on to become reality. And then again, going back to what Pastor mentioned earlier, it is everything is spiritual, internal, and the physical is only a manifestation of that. So those conditions were created by the individuals from the sin, feeling like they were cut off. So they essentially, in the physical reality, cut themselves off. Thoughts or questions on that? And it talks about kindred of fire in my anger, which will burn forever. That fire burns, in a sense, internally until that person is able to deal with the sin, or in a sense, and get back on track. It's not a punishment that is happening. It is more so just this is saying a natural law in terms of how things transpire. That fire is to get you back on track. That fire is akin to karma. Karma is not a punishment. Karma is not always needed. if in a situation someone has sin, but then they deal with that sin and address it themselves and correct it, or in a sense untangle that particular thing, then nothing needs to happen to actually force that to happen, because it's been dealt with. That is which will burn forever. That forever, them being stuck out in the wilderness, they eventually address that in a sense. Eventually. Thoughts or comments, George? Does that make sense?
You know, all of it makes sense to me. I mean, I one of the things that Reverend Richard said that just stood out, it is your thought. And from your thought, it will either be a situation that benefits the individual or a situation that benefits humanity. So I just think with everything, at least that what I do, I got to make sure my thought is correct. Why do I want to do this? Is it for selfish gain, or is it for a gain to benefit humanity? So I think it really starts with think a thought, get a feeling, do an action. Thank you.
The other part that's kind of sneaky stuck in that is when someone has a thought only for their own personal gain or self, is automatically a sense of doubt that they have to go above and do something so that in a sense that they are good, versus is more likely that if they're doing it for the universe, that they automatically trust that things are going to be good for them regardless. It's like I don't have to, in this particular situation, look out for myself. Remember, we're talking about all of this is internal. So we're talking about, in a sense, what is chiseled on the heart, which is deep, within. And it's those particular things and what we believe, which is driving our present and driving our creation in itself. All the stuff when it keeps saying the Lord says this and the Lord says that, that is the Lord that is talking about is the Lord that you are. So this is an internal dialogue, if you will. Thoughts or comments at the moment? So in the latter parts of the verses in 5 through 8, it talks about the person who only trusts, in a sense, what they have created, because everything physical, again, is what has already been created, the manifestation of what's been going on internal. That person will be cursed. Again, going back to, as we said, this is simply a, I guess to say, natural spiritual law where that person loses sense of their creativity and they themselves being the Lord and creating and having power in a sense. Well, if they only focus on the flesh, that's when they end up like a bush in the desert, dried up. And this is in the wilderness, and this is the contrast that trees that was in the second verse, and then the trees that is in the 8th verse that is just planted by the waters by the stream. And in a sense, it is more so locked in the present, as Pastor Richard was explaining, and everything automatically being provided, and it's simply flourishing. It's not concentrating in a sense that I have to maintain these conditions when in the past, when I was a small tree, I'm not concerned about that in my future. The tree is just more so just being. Guess that was a bit of a long recap, but that's all I have, unless there's any thoughts or comments or questions.
Yeah, that part to me kind of summed up the whole thing. Uh, Looking at that tree is just busy being a tree. It talks about the leaves. It talks about, all of it has a purpose, and from the leaves and the fruit and the roots and all of it is beneficial to the earth or to animal kingdom. All of it is beneficial in some way or another. If we are like that, we become beneficial to the mankind. We become that tree that's planted and that's rooted in truth and become beneficial to mankind and bring enlightenment and be the principle that others live by. That's the part that kind of stuck out to me is that because it lists in there 3 different types of vegetation and you tied them all together beautifully. And so and if you think, stop and look at what you said and Pastor said, I guess we've kind of been talking about the last few weeks is living in the present. That's pretty much a common theme that I'm starting to see now in the scriptures when we talk about this. Not dwelling in the past, not looking so far ahead, but being in appreciation who you are now. So it's another way to me of saying, I fix the world by fixing myself. I change the world rather by changing myself. So just another way of looking at that. More detailed, I guess.
I have a question. When you speak of that tree, Ron, so do we become the same tree like that tree in Revelations with the leaves that bring healing?
Wow, that's a good question, Audrey. I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. We are that tree. We are the because when you think about trees, and I look back at from Genesis, when it says, all these are good for food. These are talking about principles. These are life. These are truth. These are the nourishment that you live by. So when the world needs that, you become those leaves. You become that healing. You become that enlightenment, that nourishment that is needed. So I like that. I hadn't thought about that. Anyone else? Any can answer that? Okay. But I personally, I say yes. I say it's exactly it. I think that's a good time. Are we done? Any other questions for Sheldon? Oh, good session then. It looks like a good place to take a pause. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. Questions and comments. Uh, and
Hey,
we'll
Ron,
yes, ma'am.
this is Rainier. I did see a
Mhm.
Nova, and actually it's a 2-part, so the next part will be this week, but a Nova um, episode, and it talked about kind of part of what we were talking about, but the physical how we don't see what we see, and how our brain interprets color. And I mean, we don't see color. It talks about what we don't actually see, but we think we see, and our brains, our memories fill that all in. And as we were talking today about not setting scenarios or imagining scenarios, it reminded me of that series, which might be interesting to watch too, to show even in the physical, we don't see what we see. We don't, all the things that we take as truth, as absolute, they're still based on our mind interpreting signals, right? Not on what's really there. And that was, yeah, that's all I had.
What's the name? You say it's a series. Where is it?
It's on PBS. It's called Nova, but it's like
Nova?
it was like the one that just happened like last week. And I think there's
Okay.
a follow-up one this week, and I forgot what sense it's on, but I forgot. I mean, they're like on season 54 or something, but I forgot. It's just recent, and it's about your senses, about do you see or not? Do you perceive what you think you perceive or not? So it might be findable, or it might be replaying sometime this week.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Welcome.
Yeah. Well, just when we have days where a few weeks ago, Pastor was talking about the pineal gland and how that relates to milk and honey, and tying all that up with our nerve endings and spinal cord, and we are, wow, we are beautifully made, and it's just a tapestry of brilliance and creativity, and we see just this body, and it's so much more to us if we see ourselves as spiritual beings, how much we awaken this body and tie it to everything that is, and how much more visible things become to us. So it is a beautiful thing. So yeah, thank you. We those of you who have opportunity to take a look at that. Okay. Anything else?
Couple of things.
Yes, sir.
One is I see more clearly that we are beginning to see the spiritual essence of who we are, and understanding that the illusionary existence of the body is necessary in order for us to be heard. Because if we were speaking without these bodies, it would not be audible sound as we hear right now. We are beginning to see what it looks like, what it feels like, what the experience is in who we're created to be, and that's a spiritual entity, as opposed to this physical thing that we call human. The heart to wrap your mind around. If you're constantly focused on religion and the news, it keeps us in a place of flux, as opposed to us being in a place of stability. That stability comes from understanding that these bodies are temporal, or non-existent really, because when the spirit leaves his body, it no longer exists. It begins to go to blend with the earth, meaning that it goes back to where it came from. Without these bodies, we would not have earth consciousness. We will only have spiritual awareness. And earth consciousness is a necessary entity for us to create in this garden called earth a consciousness that is one with spiritual consciousness. And when that happens, we see these bodies as Jesus saw his body. Mind you, his body. He saw his body as necessary entity for the disciples who saw him in the upper room and were shocked that he was walking. It was necessary to show them the power of the spiritual over this earth consciousness. The whole consciousness and awareness of the earth is illusionary in every aspect. That's only realized when a true resurrection takes place, as with Jesus. That's available for us. Jesus said, y'all would do everything I did if you only believe as I believe. He did not exclude the glorified body that he inhabited after having left it. What am I saying to you? Everything that happened in the life of Jesus is a direct result of what happened in the wilderness with Moses. It is directly connected to the nation that came from Abraham. The nation that came from Abraham is a spiritual nation with earth consciousness. Your inhabited, your descendants will be numbered with the stars. Your descendants will be as grains of sand on the beach area, well, next to the waters, meaning a spiritual / earth consciousness. In the wilderness, the promised land, the land that's promised to you, gives you opportunity to birth for the purpose of humanity in understanding of who they are, thus altering the earth consciousness so that it will have an affinity for the spiritual. All of these things are seen in the things that Jesus did. Don't depend on the water to cleanse you. The water is a symbol, but it also is there to keep life alive in this earth, keep everything alive in this earth. Don't depend on the water. Don't think that the water can redirect your mode of thinking. John said, one will come who will baptize you with the Spirit. The baptism with Spirit is an infusion of wisdom that is guiding us from a barren place of duality. When we walk in the essence of who we were created to be, duality does not exist anymore. One with is the goal, meaning that as above, so is below. It's not a geographical move. It is simply a way of stating the desire for unicity between the spiritual in this illusionary earth being one with the spirit in of the unseen, which means that the earth itself will become the essence of what the human is supposed to embrace, as the human did for so long, being one with what we call nature. When the human was one with what we call nature, the human had an extremely high awareness of spirituality. When the idea of possessing for individual benefit the physical land, then the spirituality began to shift from the eye to the eyes, and that was necessary so that we can see what it looks like, what the experience is to be Yahweh Elohim, to be who or what created us. Without this element of duality, there would not be unicity. We were inundated with selfishness in order for that duality to come into existence. The reason there was such a unicity prior to the ownership for the benefit of the individual is to show us what can be, to show us what the Native Americans are talking about when they talk about speaking with the ancestors and seeing the ancestors. It will help us to understand what the Dogon, how the Dogons were able to see the planetary bodies, and to say that we came from Sirius too, or were they really saying we came from the universe? We are children of the universe. All of those things were based in what we call our psyche, for us to see what can be if we want it to be. And if we want it to be, it is imperative that we be still and allow the river of the universe, the energy of the universe, to capture us, to move us into the flow of this river of energy, this spiritual river that transcends time and space, but at the same time can see and experience both at the same time. That's where I see us being at this moment. If we truly desire that, or to stay in this space, then that is something that we are going to have to desire above anything else in this earth, above anything that we have to face. Knowing that no matter how difficult things have been, that's the past. If you had a difficulty yesterday, that's the past. Don't anticipate one tomorrow. That's the future. There isn't one at this moment. There are no difficulties at this moment because we are focused on righteousness. We are focused on understanding the wisdom of our Creator. Stay in that space, in this space of focus on understanding the wisdom of our Creator day in and day out. Teach yourself to be there, and then you will know yourself. And you will begin to see that yourself is myself, and myself is yourself, and all of us are really one, meaning unicity is achievable by us in this time period. That is why, even when we come back together, meaning that when we physically enter the building at Foundation of Great New Faith, wherever, that we maintain the structure that we have established through Zoom. And that is making sure that we travel the journey together, whether it be in a building or in various buildings as we are now. The opportunity is present, and we must take advantage of this opportunity because the Creator granted us this. It doesn't matter how much money somebody makes off of Zoom through investment. I don't care. It doesn't matter. What matters is we have the power to speak and be one, regardless of where we are. We have that power. And that power is available to us in this physical realm, in this realm of illusions. This power grants us the ability to see what it looks like, what the experience feels like, to be able to talk to each other, to be with each other even though we can't see each other. That's imperative. When we truly embrace the reality of all of this, it will not matter whether Zoom exists or not. We will be in conversation. We will be with each other all the time. An example of that cluster are the facilitators when we are together or not. When the phone disconnects or when the computer disconnects from Zoom, one of the other facilitators can pick up where we left off and keep it moving. Not because of intellect, but because of desire to be one. Not 12, not 13, but one. And being that one, we have access to the same energy forces that each of us have. And that access is yours as well if you desire to embrace it. I'm done with that, but I do want to make an announcement before we get off. Ron?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Go ahead, Pastor. I think we're pretty much done unless there are questions or comments about what Pastor just said. Anybody?
I just wanted to put that same question to Pastor because I don't think you were on when I asked. Warren was talking about the tree in Jeremiah, and I asked if that tree is the same tree that is in Revelation with the healing leaves or whatever.
Yes, it is. That tree that's in Revelation is us. We are that tree. And the leaves from that tree are taken from healing, for healing, every time we are on with Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and every time we come in contact with someone else. Our presence is a healing for those who are seeking or for those who don't know that they need to seek or don't know that they are. Our presence, our words are the leaves that brings healing to the religious mind so that it can be a spiritual, realize it's a spiritual soul, brings healing to the races. Diversity training is rehab for races. That it does not work. But what does work is that the leaf of our words that is infused into the macro, making it available to receive by anyone who desires to receive it. Does that make sense, Ms. Audrey?
Oh, yes, of course. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. That's just who we are.
Thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead, Pastor.
Simply going to say, we are the thought. That's it. We are the thought. The only difference is whether the thought is controlled by the mind or the soul. Sometimes.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions or comments? Okay. Pastor, did you have a final word you want to give us?
Yeah, yes, I do. I want us to look at coming back to being in a building. The 3rd of June at Foundation, and the 4th of June at Great New Faith. 5th the same. However, I want us to realize that when we are in that building on Saturday, June the 3rd, it is just as imperative as those who are not in that building do what they are doing right now. Connect to each other through Zoom. The same thing on the 4th and the 5th. Why am I saying this to you? Because it is imperative that energy forces stay interlocked with each other. And we don't want to break that sense of unicity that exists now, that bond that exists now. I do believe that if our coming back together to be one with each other, to see each other physically rather, causes us to separate as we were prior to COVID, that something will take place that will move us out of those buildings and force us to be where we are now. Socialization, interaction physically is important. I'm not disputing that at all. I'm not minimizing that at all. You cannot beat the interaction with people. However, spiritual interaction is more important than any physical interaction. When we are on this phone on Zoom, we are more focused because we don't have distractions in front of us as we would in buildings. We're not trying to read expressions on people's face. We are simply speaking from the heart. And there will be times when I won't be there physically, but I will be there. And I expect the same from all of us. because what we do hold the earth together. We are in the gap. If you put your hand to the plow and turn back, you're not worthy the principles of Elohim, meaning that you have rendered the principles of the kingdom to be null and void in your life. You made the commitment. That commitment stands. Whether you're on Zoom, the phone, whether you're standing on the street corner talking to someone, or whether you're gathered in a building. We are not church. In the classical understanding of church, we are not that. We are not a circle that does the same thing over and over again. We are an assembly of bodies that seeks the wisdom of the kingdom so that we can be in total control of the body as Jesus was. That's our resurrection. The focus cannot be this physical thing called the body. It is your body. You can do with it as you desire. And the greater desire is to bring it to this place of resurrection. At least it should be. So June 3rd, Foundation Building Interaction. June 4th, Greater Faith Building Interaction. And June 5th, the Monday night interaction. So that's all I have to say in reference to that, unless there is a question. Oh, and we will start sharply, 10, 11, and 6. Are there any questions or comments?
Good morning. This is Janice. I do have a question. There are those of us within Foundation and within our families that have compromised immune systems. And I'm just wondering if we're planning to mask up or if we're meeting outside, or I don't know, I just kind of wanted to point that out.
With the compromised immune system, I suggest one of two things. Well, first of all, we go mask up. That's the first thing. The second thing is this. If you have a compromised immune system and you don't want to, you don't feel comfortable in the physical setting, then you can join by Zoom. However, we will mask up. Thank you for raising that question, Janice, because if we don't mask, I won't ever be there. And all of you know my primary reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
So is that clear to everyone? Clear to you, Janice?
Yes, thank you. So you said accept me?
Ma'am?
Were you saying, was it clear to everyone except me, or?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Gotcha.
Including you. Any questions or comments about that? Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Rev, could you please give those dates again for me, if so I can write them down, if you don't mind, please?
June 3, 4, 5. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Got it? You have it, George?
Yeah, I'm still right, Rev. June 3rd will be at Foundation, or June 3rd will be at Greater New Faith.
June 3rd is on a Saturday, Foundation. June 4th is on a Greater New Faith, and June 5th is on Monday, and that's the class that normally meets there.
Okie doke. Thank you very much.
Made that great in your face. You're quite welcome. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Hope everyone have questions. We'll clear it up again tomorrow. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everybody.